My name is Margaret. I'm 64 years old, and I live in a three-story Victorian home nestled in peaceful Vermont, a place I once believed to be a haven for love, loyalty, and family. But on the evening of my mother's memorial, as everyone raised their glasses in remembrance, my daughter-in-law leaned in close and whispered something that froze the blood in my veins. "I'm pregnant with your husband's child." Have you ever been stabbed in the back right when your heart was already breaking? Have you ever had to keep quiet just to preserve the dignity of the very person who betrayed you? If what I'm about to share stirs something inside you, leave a comment below. Tap like if you believe the truth always finds a way. And don't forget to subscribe, because what she was hiding wasn't just a baby. It was a scheme that could destroy my entire family, and I was not going to let that happen. Douglas and I got married when we were both just over 20, with nothing but love and a small rental apartment on the outskirts of Burlington. I still remember our first night there. It rained like crazy, the roof leaked, the walls were cracked, but Douglas held my hand, smiled, and said, "We'll turn this place into a home." And he kept that promise. Over 41 years, we built not just a warm house in Vermont, but a family I once proudly called my own. Our son Andrew was born in the winter of 1987, when the roads were covered in snow and church bells chimed every morning. He was always a quiet, thoughtful child. As he grew older, he became more and more like his father, steady, responsible, and deeply devoted to family. He studied civil engineering in New Hampshire, then returned to work for a major local construction firm. Andrew didn't have many friends, wasn't loud or flashy, but when he loved someone, he loved deeply. When he first brought Erica home, I saw that look in his eyes. The same look Douglas once had when he chose me. Erica was nothing like Andrew. She was radiant, sharp, confident, almost too polished. From the moment we met, something about her didn't quite fit in this house. It wasn't her manners or appearance. Erica always knew how to be polite, even graceful. But I couldn't feel warmth in her eyes. There was no genuine openness, the kind people have when they're entering a family with a sincere heart. Erica always seemed like she was analyzing, assessing, like our home was a property she needed to evaluate before deciding whether to invest. I once told Douglas about this while we sat on the back porch, sipping tea and listening to the wind move through the freshly cut grass. "She feels distant," I said, twirling my teacup. Douglas shrugged. "Maybe she's just shy. Or very independent. Young people these days, you never know. Give her time." I nodded and let it go. Douglas always tried to see the best in people. He wasn't one to suspect, and I didn't want to be the kind of mother-in-law who nitpicked. 3 years after their wedding, they still hadn't had a child. I asked, gently, a few times, out of genuine care. Each time, Erica just smiled and deflected. "It's still early, Mom. We want to get more settled in our careers first." Andrew would awkwardly chime in. "We've got plans, Mom. Don't worry. We won't keep you waiting forever." But time passed. Nothing changed, and eventually I stopped asking. I began to wonder if Erica simply wasn't suited for the traditional family life we lived. She was an excellent financial consultant, had an office downtown, dressed elegantly, and moved between meetings like she was born to walk through marble-floored lobbies. And I was a retired elementary school teacher who liked baking apple pies and teaching children how to fold paper airplanes. I tried to connect with Erica in every way I could. There were afternoons I invited her to cook with me, hoping to share the recipe for Andrew's childhood favorite beef stew, but she always politely declined. "I'm no good in the kitchen, Mom. Your cooking is the best anyway." I suggested walks around the lake behind the house. She was busy with emails, with calls. I invited her to the farmer's market on Saturdays. She always had a reason to cancel at the last minute. I wasn't angry, just quietly displaced. Still, I kept trying. For Andrew. I believe that a good mother is someone who makes her son feel secure in bringing his wife home. I didn't want him to feel torn between two women or to feel guilty. Every holiday, I wrapped gifts for Erica as if for my own daughter. I always spoke of her respectfully. I never gossiped to neighbors or friends. I thought I was doing the right thing. Until that night. The night Erica leaned in, surrounded by white flowers and soft memorial music, and whispered in a voice cold as steel that she was pregnant with my husband's child. Douglas. The man I had held hands with for 4 decades. The man who stood by me through every stage of life. Her words didn't just shock me. They carved through every memory I had, casting doubt on all the quiet evenings Douglas and I spent reading side by side, on every time he bent down to tie my shoe because my knee hurt, on every birthday gift, every Christmas toast, every look of love I believed was real. I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't react. I just looked her straight in the eye and said one thing. "Thank you for telling me. I understand." And I turned away as if it meant nothing. But that night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to Douglas breathe beside me, listening to the wind rustle through the trees, my heart pounding in chaos, knowing that everything had changed. Not just because of a young woman's words, but because this house, this life, had just cracked. And what I couldn't have imagined was that behind Erica's whispered confession lay a storm bigger than anything I had ever faced. After that night, I could no longer see things the same way. Every step Douglas took in the house, every avoided glance, every word from Erica felt like a thorn pressing into my mind. I no longer knew what was real. But I knew this. If I wanted to protect what remained of my life, I had to start looking with clarity. Douglas grew quiet. Not the quiet of a tired man after a long day, but the silence of someone hiding something. He no longer sat with me on the porch reading the morning paper. Instead, he went out to the garden early to water plants, mow the lawn, tasks that had always been Marcus's, the gardener who came 3 times a week. When I asked, Douglas replied curtly, "I just need the exercise." But I knew him. He never liked the smell of mulch or picking up dead leaves. He started paying attention. Erica began dropping by unannounced. Not on weekends with Andrew like before, but at odd hours. 11 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, sometimes near dusk. She always had a reason. "I forgot a file. Wanted to ask you about Andrew's favorite egg dish. Came to get some lavender from your kitchen." None of them were wrong, but none felt right either, because every time she entered, the air shifted like the surface of a lake right before it freezes. One day, I asked gently, "Andrew didn't come with you?" Erica smiled, lips not touching her eyes. "He's in a meeting. I had a free moment, so I stopped by." "You're still working downtown?" "Yes, but I'm remote this week. My schedule's more flexible." I smiled back, nodded, but unease bloomed inside me. I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions or places blame easily. I taught children for 30 years, and one thing I learned. It's the things you don't see that matter most. That afternoon, Douglas went to the grocery store, and I stayed home washing some tablecloths from the attic. I stepped into the hallway to grab a sewing kit for a torn corner when I heard a voice from the living room. I froze. Erica's voice. "No, I can't wait any longer," she said, tension sharp in every word. "I've made it clear. If he doesn't transfer the money today, I'll send the recording to Andrew. And believe me, no one will be able to save him after that." I gripped the doorknob, heart pounding. Her voice was nothing like the warm tone she used with me. It was cold, calculating. I stepped back, pulse racing. Who was she talking to? He could mean Douglas or someone else. What recording? I didn't hear anything more. When I returned to the kitchen, still shaken, Erica was gone. No goodbye. Her heels struck the wooden floor with purpose as she left. The door clicked softly shut, like the lid on a secret box. I sat on the kitchen bench, staring at my untouched cup of tea. In nearly 60 years, I had never felt so small, so lost in my own home. I began remembering every time Erica was alone in the living room, every time she went upstairs looking for Andrew when I knew he wasn't home. The way she gently touched Douglas's shoulder when he spoke, the glances, the offhand comments, it all began to line up, no longer just a vague suspicion. That night, I didn't say anything to Douglas. When he set the plate of food on the table, I quietly poured the water, watching him from behind the porcelain vase I'd used since Andrew was in elementary school. His cheeks had sunken, more gray streaked his temples, and his hand trembled slightly as he reached for the spoon. He glanced at me briefly, then looked away, as if afraid of what my eyes might reveal. "What's wrong with your hand?" I asked softly. "Oh, probably just from working in the yard all day," he replied. "What are you planning to plant next season?" "Maybe a few more lavender bushes." I didn't ask anything more, because the answers didn't matter. I just watched him, the man I once believed was the safest part of my life. But now even his silence made me doubt. Maybe he wasn't the mastermind, but he was hiding something. And I needed to know what. Not to punish him, but to protect what was left of the family I'd spent nearly half my life building. About a week after I overheard that strange phone call in the living room, Douglas was gone the entire afternoon. He said he needed to stop by the pharmacy and then visit an old friend in the next town over. I didn't press. Every time Douglas spoke lately, it felt like I was reading a line he had rehearsed. It was lightly raining that day. The house was quieter than usual, just the ticking of the wall clock and the wind slipping through a drafty kitchen window. I was planning to go up to Andrew's old room to rearrange some Christmas gift boxes when I noticed Douglas's office door slightly ajar. What struck me was he always locked that room, even when stepping away for a few minutes. I hesitated at the threshold. In all our years together, I had never entered his office without an invitation. It was his private space where he read, wrote, or simply sat alone for hours. But today, I don't know why, my feet just moved forward. Douglas's silver laptop was open, the glow of the screen casting a faint light over the oak desk. I was about to close the lid to save the battery when I noticed a folder titled Logs_Security already open. I moved the mouse. A list of video files appeared, clearly labeled with dates and times. Most of them had room names: living room_cam, garage_drawer. It felt like my heart stopped. Douglas had never told me there were cameras in the house. I looked around, then up to the ceiling corner, where a small, cleverly hidden device peeked out from behind the bookshelf. That's why I'd never noticed anything unusual. I opened the most recent file, dated just a few days ago. Footage from a high-corner camera in the master bedroom played. In the frame was Erica, alone in my room. She walked slowly to the white dresser beside the bed, opened the second drawer, the one where I kept important documents, including the will, investment certificates, and Douglas's medical files. Erica was wearing thin gloves, the kind used in labs. Her fingers flipped through the folders, her eyes scanning each paper like she was searching for landmines. She lingered on a file labeled Simulation 200-22-202-2202, then pulled out her phone from her coat pocket and took photos of each page, methodically. I couldn't breathe. What I was seeing wasn't intuition anymore. It was undeniable, living proof. Erica had entered my room, gone through my private drawer, worn gloves, and photographed our asset documents. I opened another file, garage_entry_3_PM. There she was again, entering the house through the garage on a day Andrew was away at a conference in New York. She walked straight into Douglas's office and used a separate key to unlock his desk drawer. I fast-forwarded. Inside were banking documents and, instantly recognizable to me, an old version of our will, the one before the revision. She picked it up, reading every page. My stomach churned. I thought of the hundreds of times I had tried to reach out to her, sharing my soup, my toasted bread, inviting her to farmers markets. She never outright refused, but she never truly accepted either. Because she didn't want love, she wanted control. I quickly printed out a few stills from the video footage. Then I shut everything down, returned everything to its original place. I didn't touch anything else. I needed Douglas not to know I had found out. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed more time to understand his true role in all of this. That evening, Douglas came home late. He set the pharmacy bag on the table and hung up his coat like always. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, the warm yellow light casting a soft glow over the cream-colored granite countertop. "What did the doctor say?" I asked without looking up. "Oh, cholesterol's a bit high," he said, to cut back on red meat and drink more water. His voice sounded normal, but I sensed a small pause after his words, a quiet preparation, like an actor staying in character. I nodded, rinsing the greens. "Erica stopped by this afternoon. Picked up an old folder from the bedroom," I said lightly, like it meant nothing. Douglas froze. I looked over. "When did you install cameras in the bedroom?" His eyes halted for a beat, then darted away. "Just for safety. There's been a lot of petty theft in the area lately." "Right," I said quietly, not taking my eyes off his face. "Safety, but I think the one stealing from this house isn't a stranger." Douglas swallowed hard. I saw his throat move. I turned away, continuing to chop scallions. But in my mind, the pieces were beginning to fall into place. And Erica, she wasn't just my daughter-in-law. She was playing a dangerous game, one she assumed I'd never understand. But I'd spent 10 years teaching children how to play chess. I knew how to wait, and I knew when to strike. I decided to meet with Mr. Halston on a mild Wednesday morning. He had been our family attorney for over 2 decades. From home purchases to insurance agreements and wills, I trusted him like an old friend who knew our family like the back of his hand. I called to schedule an appointment, but the young secretary's voice sounded uncertain. "Mr. Halston retired about 3 months ago, ma'am. The office is now under Attorney Gregory Marsh." I froze. I was never notified. "Perhaps the notice was misplaced," she added quickly. "But Mr. Marsh can still assist you with any existing records." I thanked her politely and hung up. A strange feeling crept over me, like someone had changed the locks to my home without asking. That night, over dinner, I asked Douglas directly, "Did you know Halston retired?" Douglas nodded slightly. Yes. He had a minor stroke, stepped down early. He recommended Gregory as his replacement. I signed a few papers to make sure there were no disruptions in our finances. I paused mid-bite. "What finances?" Douglas didn't meet my eyes. "Just some insurance updates, recurring authorizations, nothing major." I didn't say more, but the next morning I put on a thick coat, grabbed my folder, and drove to the new attorney's office. The building was still the same. A small, 2-story red brick building overlooking oak trees shedding their autumn leaves. But the name on the glass door had changed. Gregory Marsh, family law attorney, estate planning, advanced financial advisory. I was invited into the office while Gregory finished a meeting. While I waited, I noticed the framed photos on the walls. Pictures with local politicians, a degree from an out-of-state university, and a clipped article from a legal magazine titled, "Attorney Marsh, the man who plans your financial future." When he walked in, I stood to shake his hand. A man around 50, salt and pepper hair, well-tailored suit, a confident but unreadable gaze. "Mrs. Holloway, pleasure to meet you. I've heard good things from Mr. Douglas. I'm here to verify a few details about the will," I said, polite but direct. He nodded, opened his laptop. "Of course. The most recent update was at the end of May, signed by both you and Mr. Douglas." I frowned. "I never signed anything in May." He looked at me for a moment, then turned the screen. "Here, you're listed right here with your signature." I looked at it. The signature was familiar, definitely my name, but instantly I realized it was a scanned copy from an old document. The size of the signature, the slant, the ink pressure, every detail matched exactly with the one I'd signed 3 years ago when we revised the investment declaration. This is my old signature. Someone inserted it into an updated version of the will that I never saw, I said, my eyes fixed on the screen. Gregory leaned back in his chair, momentarily unsettled. You're saying you didn't sign this document? I'm certain, and I want to see the full contents of that will. He scrolled to the document. Just reading the first few lines, I felt my blood rush to my temples. If Douglas passed away, all the assets under his name, including this very house, would go to Erica Catherine Holloway. My name was nowhere in it. No clause about residential rights, no mention of shared property. Even the home I had lived in for more than 40 years would belong to the woman who once threatened me with a quiet, venomous whisper. I sat still for a moment, then said calmly, Mr. Marsh, I want a full copy of this document, and I also want you to know this is proof of forged signature. Whoever's behind this, I trust you're professional enough not to be complicit. Gregory's eyes darkened slightly. I understand. I'll print a copy for you, but I strongly suggest you talk to Mr. Douglas. There may have been a misunderstanding. I didn't respond. As I left the office, I gripped that copy like it was the last shred of truth I had left. There was no more doubt. Erica and Douglas had quietly erased me from everything. But why? For money? For a child no one could even confirm the paternity of? Or was there something deeper, darker, that I hadn't uncovered yet? I drove home, passing rows of autumn pines turning gold and red, my heart hollow and cold. But one thing was now crystal clear. If I didn't stand up and reclaim the truth, there'd be nothing left to hold on to. And after being by Douglas's side for so many years, I could recognize the signs when someone was living in fear. And I started to suspect that person wasn't just me. I couldn't sleep that night after returning from Gregory Marsh's office. My mind was torn apart by 1,000 questions, but what haunted me most wasn't the forged will. It was the look in Douglas's eyes every time I brought up Erica. There was something in his expression, a sense of being lost, a flicker of shame, that made me feel he wasn't the mastermind behind it all, but he definitely wasn't innocent either. The next morning, while Douglas went out to buy gardening supplies as he had been doing a lot lately, I sat in front of his laptop, the one I had quietly memorized the password for after the first time I'd checked the camera footage. I opened the banking app Douglas usually used. The account was still logged in. Everything was displayed in front of me like a door swinging wide open. I skimmed through the recent expenses, some familiar bills, utilities, seed purchases, gas money, but when I clicked over to the transfer and investment history, my chest tightened. The first outgoing transaction was for $25,000 8 months ago, labeled ETHCoin via QuantumGate. I didn't know much about cryptocurrency, but I recognized the name of that platform. It had been all over the news for its ties to multiple scams. I scrolled down and saw more, 40,000, 70,000, then 110,000, each going to the same digital wallet with a long cryptic ID code. Altogether, over $300,000. I froze. Douglas had never mentioned any of this. He'd always been the cautious one, the kind of man who asked for my opinion even before putting a few hundred into our retirement account. And now, he had quietly drained almost everything we had saved together. I clicked over to the sub-accounts. One line made my hands tremble. Holloway Education Fund. Remaining balance, $3,215. I couldn't believe it. The scholarship fund we started when Andrew was only 8, once holding more than $70,000, was now nearly gone. I don't remember when I started crying. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it meant. I couldn't understand what could have pushed Douglas to risk so much. I printed every transaction record, slid them into a thick folder, and hid it beneath the lining of our bedroom closet. I felt afraid of my own husband. That afternoon, I brewed 2 cups of mint tea and brought them out to the porch like always. Douglas was already sitting on the old cushioned chair, eyes gazing into the blaze of red maples lining the gate. "Did you invest in cryptocurrency?" I asked, gently, as if I were talking about the weather. Douglas froze. He set the cup down without taking a sip. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because over 300,000 of our dollars are gone. Because Andrew's scholarship fund is down to just over 3,000. And because you didn't say a word to me." He didn't answer right away. After a while, he lowered his head and said hoarsely, I thought I could recover it." "Have what?" "Erica said it was a big project, backed by tech investors. She had friends in the industry. I thought if it doubled, then maybe—" I placed my cup on the table without making a sound. "Erica?" "She introduced me, even sent analysis reports. It made money the first few weeks. Then it crashed." "And you kept putting in more?" "I used what I had saved first. Then I thought just one more try. So I took from Andrew's fund." I stayed quiet, not out of anger, but because there was a growing emptiness in my chest. Douglas, who once stayed up nights planning our savings, who used to grumble if I bought bedsheets that cost $20 more, had secretly drained over 300,000 into a reckless gamble Erica had introduced. "You were played," I said softly. Douglas didn't argue. "I know. But by the time I realized, it had already gone too far." I looked him in the eye. "Is that why you let Erica change the will?" He flinched. "You know about that?" "I know everything, Douglas. And now, I want you to tell me why. Were you afraid she'd blackmail you? Afraid of losing face with Andrew? Or did you truly believe I deserved nothing?" Douglas sat there like a man tied to a chair. Finally, he exhaled, his eyes glassy with tears. "I just wanted to keep you safe from her. Erica knows more than you think. She has recordings from when I borrowed from Andrew's fund. She said if I didn't put her name on the will, she'd tell Andrew everything. She'd say I'd betrayed our own son." I leaned back against the chair. The cold wind cut through the porch. But the coldest thing wasn't the air. It was the truth unfolding slowly before me. That morning, I saw Marcus trimming the rose vines by the trellis behind the house. Sunlight filtered through the fiery maple branches, the breeze was soft, and the snip of pruning shears echoed steadily, like nothing unusual was happening in our home. But I knew beneath that quiet lay a storm ready to break. I brought 2 glasses of iced tea, one for me, one for Marcus. He was in his mid-30s, slim, tall, and reserved. For the past 6 years, Marcus had been the one person outside the family I could fully trust. He never spoke much, never pried, worked hard, showed up on time, and always maintained the right distance. I handed him the glass. Marcus smiled gratefully, took off his gloves, and sat on the wooden bench beneath the maple tree. "Mind if I ask you something, Marcus?" "Of course not, Mrs. Holloway." I paused. "Do you remember the old camera that used to be mounted by the trellis?" Marcus hesitated briefly. His hand gripped the glass slightly tighter. "Yes, I remember. When did you take it down?" He looked up at me. Marcus's warm brown eyes flickered with something. "About 2 months ago." "Who asked you to?" At that moment, he looked at me for a long time, then exhaled softly, placing the glass on the ground. "It was Erica," he said. "She told me the camera was broken, the footage blurry, said she wanted to replace it with a higher resolution model. I assumed you already knew." "How much did she pay you?" Marcus looked at me, then lowered his gaze. $150, just to take it down and stay quiet. She said she didn't want to bother you and Mr. Douglas with a minor technical issue. I didn't speak for a few seconds. Marcus was honest, but he wasn't the kind of person who could be used that easily. Unless there was a reason. And what did you see, Marcus? That question silenced him. Wind rustled through the trees, golden leaves spinning in the air like secrets being stirred awake. Finally, he looked up, guilt plain in his eyes. The day Miss Erica came over, the same day I took the camera down, a man drove up in a black SUV, parked right behind the fern line. I was trimming the hedges along the side of the house, so I saw everything. As I walked toward the backyard, I saw her standing very close to him. How close? I asked, my voice tight. Marcus swallowed hard. She had her arms around his neck. Then she kissed him. Not a casual greeting, Mrs. Holloway. I saw it clearly. I set my glass of tea on the ground, fingers clasped tightly together. Was it Douglas? Marcus shook his head. No, ma'am. The man was younger, maybe 35 or 40, black hair, wore a gray suit, not someone local. I've never seen him before. I closed my eyes for a moment, not out of exhaustion, but because too many puzzle pieces were shifting in my mind. Erica removed the camera, met with a stranger in the backyard, and made sure nothing was recorded. All carefully planned. Did you hear anything they said? I asked, my voice barely louder than the wind. Marcus shook his head. I was too far, but as she turned to leave, I saw her hand something to the man, looked like an envelope. And they didn't come inside, just talked out in the yard, then left, quickly. I nodded and sat in silence for a long while. Finally, I said, "Thank you for telling me the truth. I know that wasn't easy." Marcus looked pained. I didn't know what to do, Mrs. Margaret. I didn't want to get involved in family matters. But when she started coming too often, and then pressured me to take down the camera, I started to feel scared. Scared of what? Scared of being made her secret keeper. I knew that feeling well. For weeks now, I'd been pushed into that same corner, kept silent because I didn't know when to speak or who to trust. Can you keep this to yourself just a little longer? I asked gently. Just for now, until I find out who that man is. Marcus nodded. You're a good person. I trust you. I just hope Andrew doesn't get hurt by all of this. I turned to him, eyes stinging. That's all I hope too. That afternoon, when I walked back inside, I stood in the living room for a long time, staring out the window into the backyard. I imagined Erica out there, smiling, handing over an envelope, kissing a man who wasn't her husband, and then walking into my home like nothing had happened. This house used to be my safe place, but now I understood. This very space I loved most was being quietly invaded day by day, by someone I had tried to accept as my own, and I could no longer let her cross that threshold as if I didn't exist. Later that day, I was slicing potatoes in the kitchen for a stew when the phone rang sharply, an unfamiliar number with the area code from the town hospital. My heart sank before I even understood what was happening. Mrs. Holloway? A nurse's voice came through, urgent. Your husband, Mr. Douglas Holloway, was brought into the emergency room about 30 minutes ago. He fell down a flight of stairs, sustained impact injuries to his head and left hip. He's still conscious, but under close observation. I felt nothing but the pounding of my heart. I grabbed my car keys and the nearest jacket, rushing out the door as if the autumn wind itself was pushing me forward. On the way to the hospital, my hands trembled uncontrollably. Only one question echoed in my mind. Who was at the house with him? I rushed into the ER hallway. The smell of antiseptic hit me. Everything was white and sterile and cold. A young doctor came to meet me. Are you the wife of Mr. Douglas Holloway? Yes. Is he all right? The injuries to his shoulder and hip aren't life-threatening, but there's a small fracture in the scapula. We've stabilized it and administered pain medication. What we're watching closely is the abrasion on the back of his head. There's a possibility it came from a direct impact. I nodded, my heart heavy. He said he slipped down the stairs? I asked, trying to sound composed. The doctor hesitated. Actually, examining the injury pattern and angle of the impact, we found something inconsistent. If it were a simple slip, the body would typically strike the edge of the stairs. But in this case, the shoulder and neck hit the lower steps hard, suggesting that being pushed from behind is a plausible scenario. I stood still, frozen. Pushed? We can't say for certain, he said carefully. But you should talk to your husband. If anything is unclear, his safety, and your family's, has to come first. I thanked him and followed a nurse to the recovery room, my chest still aching. The hospital room door was slightly ajar. Douglas lay on his side, his left shoulder bandaged, head wrapped in white gauze, eyes staring blankly at the window. As I stepped inside, he turned toward me and gave a faint, weak smile. Didn't think I'd fall like that. I sat in the chair beside his bed. What happened? Douglas hesitated. I was carrying a file downstairs when Erica called from the dining room. I turned, and my foot slipped. There's no railing? There is, but I couldn't reach it in time. It happened fast. Just the two of you at home? Douglas avoided my eyes, looking down at the blanket. Yeah. Andrew's away on business and you were out. And the doctor said, your fall doesn't look like a slip. Douglas tensed. They said that? I nodded. Douglas, I need you to be honest. I'm not here to blame you, but if something's going on, you need to tell me. A long silence followed. I could almost hear the steady beat of the heart monitor by the bed. Then he spoke, softly, like a man confessing. As I turned toward the stairs, Erica was right behind me. Very close. I heard her say, "Are you sure?" Before I could respond, I felt a gentle push. Not hard, but sudden. I lost my balance. I felt the skin on my scalp go cold. Do you think she did it on purpose? Douglas closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the sheet. I don't know. But when I was lying at the bottom of the stairs, she didn't panic. She just stood there for a few seconds, then called the ambulance. I leaned back in the chair, my mind drifting between layers of suspicion piling up. If Erica really did push him, then why? And then I remembered the will. Douglas, if something happened to you, who would inherit this house? He was silent. Then, softly, as if he didn't quite believe it himself, he said, Erica. I stood up and stepped out into the hallway, holding on to the railing so I wouldn't collapse. Not from pain, but from rage. Angry at myself for trusting too easily. Angry at Douglas for his weakness. And furious at Erica for pushing things this far. She wasn't just greedy anymore. She was trying to erase me and Douglas from this life by any means necessary, and I knew I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I returned home after 3 days at the hospital with Douglas. Though the doctors said the hairline fracture in his shoulder would take at least 6 weeks to heal, I knew the emotional damage would be harder to mend. Douglas avoided mentioning Erica, and I didn't push. Because I understood. Sometimes silence is the only way to hold on to a fragile peace. But I couldn't stay still any longer. I had been quiet for too long. That night, I went into my mother's old study and opened the left-hand drawer. Tucked between a mess of papers and unsent letters was a gold-embossed business card belonging to Mr. Carlton Vance, my mother's private attorney for over 20 years. A discreet man, not known for smiling, but one who had whispered to me at her funeral, Mrs. Elise always planned further than the rest of us. I called him the next morning. He still worked from the same third-floor office in the old stone building near downtown. When he heard my name, he paused for a moment, then said in a low voice, I've been waiting for this call for a long time, Mrs. Margaret. I wasn't surprised he remembered me. Carlton had the kind of memory that worked like a camera. When I arrived, he slid a thick envelope toward me, carefully sealed and marked in my mother's handwriting. Will and residency retention clauses, Elise Martha Grant Holloway. To be opened only upon direct request of my daughter. I read every page carefully, and there it was. A key clause stating that this house, the one Douglas and I currently lived in, had been transferred into my sole ownership 15 years ago as part of an internal family deed. My mother's will clearly detailed the transfer and included a notarized, fully enforceable copy. In other words, Douglas had no legal authority to transfer or include the house in any new will without my written consent. I looked at Carlton. Can you help me reinstate this document? Absolutely. And I'll also send a formal legal notice to Gregory Marsh. Forging signatures and including this house in your husband's new will is a serious offense. I nodded. No more trembling, no more confusion. All I felt was the quiet certainty that I was finally reclaiming my rightful place in this home. That same afternoon, I drove to a small office complex on the north side of town. On the brass plate outside was engraved Maggie Torres, Private Investigations, Financial and Background Verifications. I'd heard about her through an old friend who once hired her for a cheating spouse case. Maggie was around 40, sturdy build, hair pulled tight, steely gray eyes, and a no-nonsense voice. I said only one sentence. I need to know who my daughter-in-law is really involved with and whether she's actually pregnant. Maggie didn't ask for more. She just replied, "Give me 4 days." By the afternoon of the 4th day, she called back. Her voice was steady and firm. "Mrs. Holloway, I've got enough. Be prepared." I arrived at her office at 7 p.m. Maggie laid out 3 color photos. The first showed Erica leaving a private OB/GYN clinic downtown, holding a paper bag of medications. The second was a close-up of the prescription. It was for hormone pills used to simulate pregnancy symptoms, bloating, hormonal changes, nausea, breast tenderness. The medication wasn't prescribed to women who were actually pregnant. I looked at her. She's faking it? Completely. I spoke to a nurse at the clinic, under the pretense of verifying insurance. They confirmed. No ultrasound, no HCG records, no blood work orders. She came in saying she felt pregnant and requested the meds herself. I exhaled. Part of me already knew, but seeing the proof felt like being ripped open. Maggie handed me 3 more photos, this time from my own backyard. The man in a gray suit, dark hair, standing close to Erica, holding a folder of documents. Another photo showed them kissing, no doubt left. Maggie laid down a file with a background report. His name is Maxwell Cade, 42 years old, 2 prior indictments for financial fraud, history of using false identities, and was involved in a fake investment scheme in Arizona, recently relocated to this town under his real name. And, she added pointedly, he's been linked to at least 3 individuals who went bankrupt after investing in his so-called mentorship program. I froze. Erica is working with him? She's not just working with him, Maggie replied coldly. She's the mastermind. Maxwell's the front. Erica creates the fake portfolios, supplies the investment data, and targets middle-aged men with assets, usually the husbands or fathers-in-law of her clients. Then comes the pressure, emotional, physical, or coercive. It's a classic scam, redesigned with precision. I picked up the photos. My hands shook, but my eyes stayed sharp. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I just felt a bone-deep chill settle into my spine. The woman I once called daughter-in-law wasn't just tearing apart my family. She was orchestrating a chess game, with me and Douglas as her last pawns. I looked at Maggie. I'll need one more favor. I want to know, for sure, if Erica has done this before. I want everything. Names, addresses, legal records, photos. I need your help clearing this board, 1 square at a time. Maggie didn't smile or give a polite nod. She simply took out her notebook and said, I'll start first thing tomorrow. And I knew from that moment on the tide had turned. No longer was I trailing behind a fraud. I was now tracing each step, each piece of evidence, peeling back the layers of a snake, one who still believed she was queen of this house. I chose Douglas's 69th birthday as the occasion to host a celebration dinner, not because I'd forgotten what he allowed to happen, but because I needed a perfectly legitimate reason to gather every key player in this game in the right place at the right time. I booked the old restaurant where we had once celebrated our 30th anniversary. It had a private room overlooking the lake, discreet enough for the kind of performance that needed space and no interruption. I sent out the invitations via email and phone. Andrew, Erica, Douglas, and even Gregory Marsh. I kept the message warm. A cozy dinner to celebrate Douglas's birthday and reflect on all the good things we've shared. Naturally, no one declined. Erica even replied, "You're so thoughtful, Mom. I'll be there right on time." I arrived an hour early. Everything was set. The projector had been carefully installed behind a bookshelf in the private room. A brand new laptop sat ready, containing one single folder. It held the scan of the OBGYN report, screenshots of bank transfers, from Douglas's secondary account to a Florida account under Maxwell Cade's name, and digital statements showing that same account had received funds from 4 other victims over the past year. Douglas was the first to enter. He wore a light gray suit, his eyes still showing signs of fatigue from the fall down the stairs less than 2 weeks earlier. When he saw me, he gave a faint, cautious smile. "I thought you were still angry." I poured him a glass of orange juice. "We've been together for over 40 years, Douglas. I'm not angry. I just need you to listen for a moment." Erica came next, carrying a hastily wrapped gift box and a bouquet of white lilies. She wore a cream-colored fitted dress, her eyes carefully made up, but if you looked closely, showed a hidden tension. Andrew followed behind his wife, his expression troubled. My son had clearly lost weight over the past few months. Finally came Gregory Marsh, with his typical lawyer's smile, polite, measured, but insincere. I began with a few birthday wishes, cut the cake, poured the wine. Just like a normal family gathering. Erica even said, "I'm really surprised you still keep this tradition. I thought after everything, you'd be colder." I looked at her and smiled. The more you lose, the tighter you hold onto what remains. I stood up, stepped quietly behind the table, and pressed a button. The room's lights dimmed slightly. The projector screen rolled down. Before we finish dinner, I have a few things to share. First, a video. Clear images appeared on the screen with full sound. It was my bedroom. Erica bent down to the lower drawer, rummaging through it, pulling out files, flipping through them. When the sound of a key turning rang out, and it seemed like I was about to come home, she hurriedly stuffed everything back, closed the drawer with one hand, and turned off the light. The room froze. Andrew turned to Erica. "Why? Did you go into Mom's room?" Erica forced a smile. "Maybe you misunderstood. I was just looking for an old photo album Mom mentioned." I cut her off by placing a printed paper on the table. This is Erica's beta HCG hormone test result from the clinic she visited 3 times last month. The results are completely negative. And this, I slid another file forward, is the prescription she signed for herself. Medication that simulates pregnancy symptoms. Douglas was speechless. "You're not pregnant?" Erica clenched her hands, trying to stay calm. I thought I was pregnant, so I didn't mean to. I was scared of being blamed. I didn't give her room to spin a story. I played the second video. Erica standing next to Maxwell Cade in my backyard at dusk. They weren't just talking. They were kissing. Then, after a wary look, Erica handed him an envelope. He opened it and counted money on the spot. I looked over at Douglas, and here is the bank statement showing the amount in that envelope matches a transfer from your account that same morning. Gregory Marsh tightened his briefcase strap and stood. I think this needs to be discussed later. I looked at him, calm but firm. How did you replace Carlton Vance? Who appointed you? And why is the will you filed with the court missing my notarization? Gregory froze. Douglas looked at him, then turned to Erica. You used me as a money transfer tool? Laundering money for his scam? Erica lost her composure. Douglas, listen to me. I only wanted to secure a future for both of us. I cared for you. I was afraid your mother would push me out of everything. Andrew suddenly stood up. You say you're pregnant with him. You pressured him to register the unborn child in the house. You staged all this because of money? Erica laughed dryly, but her eyes were ice cold. And what do you think? Would someone like your mother ever let me into this family without something in hand? I said no more. I took out the original notarized will from Carlton Vance from the small bag beside me, along with house documents set up and left by my mother. Everything was stamped, and a copy had already been sent by the lawyer to the backup notary, according to law. I placed it on the table and looked at Douglas. I stayed silent for too long, because I wanted you to open your eyes yourself. He sat motionless, his hands trembling lightly. I really didn't know how she turned me into a tool. I turned to Erica, meeting her gaze without looking away. You're not pregnant. You have no love. You only have ambition and a cunning plan. But unfortunately, you're not the only one who knows how to play chess in this house. No one spoke. The only sounds were the projector turning off and the faint trembling of Douglas's wine glass. The birthday party ended without cake, without congratulations, just the bare truth cutting through every mask. And I knew, this game, I had taken back the board, in my own way. Gregory Marsh stood frozen in the room. His face paled as he stared at the bank statements and videos before him. His dry lips moved as if trying to say something, but no sound came out. I stayed still, my eyes fixed on him. You say you legally handled the new will, I said slowly. But did you actually witness me signing it? He stepped back, his voice wavering. I was informed you signed it. Erica sent the entire copy, with fingerprints. I thought, Andrew spoke up firmly. You're a lawyer. You know fingerprints can't replace presence and consent. You forged a document about inheritance, then dared to play innocent here? Gregory turned completely pale. I knew nothing about money transfers, fake pregnancy, or any conspiracy. I thought I was just helping with the procedure. I didn't know Erica used my name to sign additional power of attorney documents. I pushed a property transfer contract under his nose, signed with his certification on behalf of Erica while I was in New York with my sister. And this was certified by you at a time when I was not here. Do you still believe you're innocent? Gregory shook as he sat down, hands clutching his head. I was deceived. I was dragged into this without knowing. Douglas sat silently, not looking at anyone, hands clenched tightly, deep wrinkles on his forehead I'd never seen before. He pulled a tissue, wiped his forehead, then looked up at me, the cloudy eyes of a broken man. Do you remember? Last year, when I first felt strange, Erica began hinting that you no longer loved me, that you secretly transferred assets into Andrew's name. He gave a bitter smile. I didn't believe it, but then, one night I was drunk, Erica gave me a glass of wine, said she wanted to talk, and the next morning I got a message with a recording. My voice, drunk, saying dirty things I don't remember saying. She said if I didn't agree to sign the asset transfer, she'd send the recording to the press, to Andrew, to the board. Andrew looked at his father, shocked and speechless. Dad was blackmailed? Douglas nodded, choking up. I trusted her. I thought at least she wanted to keep some dignity for this family. I didn't expect it was all staged. Erica sat silently, hands clenched tightly under the table, but I saw those hands tremble. And when the door opened, Marcus, the investigator I hired, walked in with a USB drive. I looked straight at Erica. I think you remember Marcus. He just finished the investigation you thought no one would find out about. Marcus stepped forward and handed me the USB. This is a recording taken at the cafe in Montpelier, the place Erica met Maxwell 3 days before Douglas's fall. I plugged the USB into the laptop. No images needed, just the audio was enough. Erica's voice was clear and steady. As long as he falls and stays in the hospital long enough, I'll finalize the power of attorney. Push him, but don't let him die. I don't want to be investigated for murder. The room froze. Andrew was shocked. You? You plan to kill my father? Erica jumped up, yelling, I'm not killing anyone. That's just a figure of speech. I just want things to be easier. Do you know how I've had to live in that house? Your mother despises me, your father only sees me as a trophy, and you— Enough, Andrew shouted. You think I'd defend you after all this? You betrayed me. You turned my father into a money-laundering tool. You faked a pregnancy, forged medical documents, and now you want to blame this whole family for not spoiling you enough? Erica gasped for air, her eyes red and lips trembling. She looked at Douglas, no hope left in her eyes, then at me. You're the one who dragged everything to the bottom. You won't get anything back. I calmly looked at her, my voice soft but firm. You're wrong. I don't need to take anything back. I just need to strip away all the lies in this house. The rest is up to the law. Gregory sat stunned, repeating over and over, I need a lawyer. I need my own lawyer. Douglas buried his head in his hands like someone waking from a long, exhausting nightmare. Andrew was silent, but in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen before. Clarity and real pain. Erica stood in the middle of the room, hair disheveled, face pale, no longer the glamorous woman who once stepped into my house wearing silk dresses and high heels. The mask had fallen, and the chessboard now turned. Erica was arrested on Monday morning while fog still blanketed the road in front of my house. The police came with search warrants carrying files provided by Marcus and Halston's law office. She was handcuffed, still wearing a white silk blouse, unbuttoned, hair messy, face gaunt. Her eyes no longer confident or cunning, only empty and angry. As she passed me, Erica turned and hissed, You'll live alone with this meaningless victory. I didn't respond. I just looked into her eyes and thought of all the women who had been turned into tools by their own relatives, manipulated under the guise of family morals. Gregory Marsh was immediately suspended from practicing law. Investigators discovered he had notarized more than 4 documents without the actual signers present, and there were signs he accepted undeclared payments from a third party. During questioning, he admitted receiving a cash envelope from Erica on the evening they accidentally met at an Italian restaurant in Burlington, just days before the new will was submitted to the court. Gregory said he thought it was just a thank you gift, but when trust is built on blindness, the truth becomes a blade. Douglas was readmitted to the hospital after his mental breakdown that day. Doctors diagnosed him with anxiety disorder, combined with mild depression. I saw him no longer trying to appear strong. During a private joint therapy session, Douglas took my hand, something he hadn't done in a long time, and quietly said, I'm sorry, Margaret. I let cowardice kill the good part left in me. I didn't say forgive. I just placed my hand over his, letting the silence stretch like a necessary pause between 2 people who once shared all their youthful dreams. Andrew filed for divorce just 1 week after Erica's arrest. He was silent, resolute, without shedding a tear. Mom, you might not believe it, but I once loved her, trusted she would build a decent home with me. Andrew told me during our first breakfast after everything. Now I just want to leave the shadow of all this to go somewhere else, where I can start fresh without these memories haunting me. He took a job at an engineering firm in Switzerland and moved there the next month. In his goodbye letter to me, Andrew wrote, "Mom, you're not the only winner in this story. Thanks to you, I escaped, and I carry that gratitude wherever I live." It took me a month to clean everything up. Douglas's study was locked. The forged documents were sealed and sent to the court. But there was one thing I still nurtured, not to erase the past, but to protect the future of those like me. I returned to my mother's old house, a small home by the maple woods, where she once taught me to cut fabric and read Dickens novels by the yellow lamp. The roof had rotted away, but in the oak drawer still lay an unfinished manuscript, the plan to establish a charity called Eleanor's Light that my mother wrote in her final days. I carried on that wish. Eleanor's Light was founded 2 months after Erica's arrest. Its mission is to help elderly women financially exploited by relatives regain control of their assets, legal knowledge, and voices in their own homes. Every month, we hold free consultations across 3 states, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Some women come with clouded eyes, hands trembling as they hold strange bank statements, but they leave with smiles, not because they are compensated, but because they know they are no longer alone. One late autumn afternoon, I returned home after a community talk in Montpelier. The cold wind blew through the window pane, carrying the scent of dry leaves and a rare sense of peace. I brewed tea and sat in the wooden chair by the window, where my mother and I once spent hours together. I looked out over the backyard where Erica once laughed loudly among the flower pots I tended, where Douglas used to set up his chair each weekend to read the paper. Everything was empty now, but no longer heavy. I closed my eyes, letting the wind slip through my fingers. In my heart, I whispered, "Finally!" I did not seek revenge. I only stopped the evil from destroying those I love, and myself. And perhaps, sometimes justice doesn't come with the bang of a gavel, but with the quiet relief of a woman reborn into herself. What would you think if one day the relatives you once ate with, who once called you mom or wife, turned out to be the ones silently pushing you out of your own life? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a betrayal that made you stand up? Not only to protect yourself, but to prevent that harm from happening to others? I believe every woman, no matter her age, deserves to be heard, respected, and to stand firmly on her own 2 feet. If you have a similar story, or have seen quiet injustices unfolding within families, I hope you'll share your thoughts below, because maybe your story will give strength to someone silently suffering. And if you want to keep hearing deep, honest, and emotional stories about the shadows in family life, where love can be tested, but courage can also grow, please subscribe. Every week, I'll share a new story, a real journey, a lesson not found in books, but one that can touch the heart of anyone who's ever been a mother, a wife, or simply believed in family.